Hello, I'm Mrs. Corbett and I'm going to take you through the second part of the presentation following on from Mr. Collins, and this is going to be full of revision tips and ways that you can support your children at home. So as Mr. Collins said, we are in a marathon, not a sprint. We need to make sure that we are fully preparing to prevent poor performance, but not be leaving it to the last minute so we're sprinting across the finish line, but also we're not burning out before we get there. I've put diagnosis, therapy and testing on here because that is the ideal model. Is we diagnose what the issues are now, we put some therapy into place and we test to see whether those things are working, and we're doing that all the way through to help us improve. So in the diagnosis section of us planning to succeed, we need to think about all the barriers that could stop us doing that. Some things we can control, some things we can't. We couldn't control the pandemic coming along in 2020 and affecting our results then. But what we do have is time, so we can think about what things normally stop people achieving. And these are the top reasons that I came up with for students at Knole Academy. It might be that they don't engage in the process soon enough. It might be that they sometimes that is out of like trepidation and fear. And other times it is just leaving things to the last minute. So the sooner we engage in this process, the better, which is why we're talking to you now. It's why we've been trying to instill those good habits as we go along. Sometimes students don't do as well as they ought because they don't have a plan in place. They don't know what the consequence is going to be for not really focusing now. They haven't got this final goal in mind. So it might be we don't have the university place yet. It might be that we don't know what we want to do for our IB or for when we finish our GCSEs. It's a good time to be having those conversations now. It could be that we run out of time, or we don't plan our time, or we don't prioritise what we really need to do, which links into the next one of focusing critically. A lot of students that don't succeed in one way or another, it's because they haven't focused on their weaknesses appropriately, because that feels like unsafe territory for them. They need to be focusing on, right, I'm not very good at that, that's what I'm going to improve upon, as opposed to staying with the very comfortable skills that they already know. Another thing is that skills aren't developed as well as knowledge. So some people might gobble up that revision guide and can regurgitate every word, but if they can't apply that to a new situation, then it's not going to be ideal. We need to make sure we're gaining that knowledge and then we can use it for those higher order skills by applying it, adapting it, adjusting it. And this is something we'll be working on in lessons, but also something that you can improve upon by doing practice. Some students might not necessarily understand all the command words for the different subjects, and nearly every subject will have a state, describe, explain, command word in questions, and you need to know the skills to fulfill those briefs and understand what those questions, those command words mean. Some people don't read the questions, that is an exam skill, and sometimes students don't build up enough endurance when they're doing their revision. We're very good at saying, do bite-sized topics, chunks of revision, do a little and often, but actually, when we think about it, in the end, they're left with a 2-hour paper that they've got to sit through and complete. So we need to be building up that endurance. Now, obviously, if we want to prepare well, we're going to need to plan our revision. I like the paper type revision, but I know that some people would prefer to make it way more efficient and use apps. I'm aware from Reddit student groups that My Study Life is a good app for this. I would say that forums like Reddit's and Student Room are really, really good to help people compare revision timetables and what they've done. Really good to find examples. So when doing planning and making a revision timetable, make sure you're conscious of how long you have until the exam so that you can stop revising once that exam has happened. Prioritise the subjects that you are weaker in or need to improve upon the most. Having our subjects interwoven, so we're not doing like a full week of chemistry and then leaving that for ages, interweaving them so you get that constant throwback, that constant recall, which means that you reduce your memory decay over time. Being realistic is really important. So this person has done 3 till 4, 4 till 5, 5 till 7 they've left blank as free time to eat, live, exist, watch the TV, and then they've done a few more hours. I do see students that have times right up to 11 o'clock with no time for breath. It's going to cause burnout. So you need to be really, really aware. Include wellbeing time, include free time, including nothing time. Exercise time is good. Finding a good work-life integration. Notice I didn't say the word balance because at this point it is going to be more exam heavy and then you're going to get more life heavy after the exam. So it is definitely an integration at this point. And you need to work on your endurance, not just short periods of revision. Plan in some longer ones as you go through so that you can sit some exam papers. So to help our endurance, the majority of successful students plan their revision with their weaknesses in mind and use past papers to test themselves. You don't have to do a whole paper at once, but what I would suggest is you take it into chunks, use those mark schemes to help you sort of be really familiar with what the exam papers are asking you for. That picture is just me typing in Edexcel GCSE maths papers. That's how easy it is to find past papers. If you need help with that, ask your teacher. I'm sure they'll take you through how to do that. Build up times, block distractions, put these well away. Use the same paper and pen. Find the pen in the exams where you're like, this is the one, which sounds ridiculous, but it will give you confidence that it's always going to feel the same. And then buy 10 so that you know it's not going to run out, because there's nothing more stressful than having the pen run out. Wear the same clothes, so while you're doing your past papers, sit in your uniform so you are, you know, as uncomfortable as you will be on the day. You'll get used to it, you'll get used to the routine. Routine is good for human beings. Have a timer so that you can say, right, I have got 40 questions to answer. Each question is going to take me a minute, etc. Use a timer. Compare your marks, keep a record. So if you do a paper, keep a record, because then you can clearly see your improvement over time. I would always suggest that. So if you do your first B1 paper, make sure you write down the mark, and then the next time you do it, you'll have something to compare it to, and you should see a marked improvement as you get more familiar with them. Build up slowly. You don't have to do a whole paper to begin with. 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes. Start building up that endurance for the exam so that you are alert, awake, and you are doing it throughout. I've made a timeline for year 11 and year 13 here, just because these are the things that are coming up for you. So right now in November, we should be trialling revision strategies, evaluating any gaps that you have, using any assessments that you're doing in class to find out what your gaps are. And also take time to sort of appreciate how well you've done so far. There's celebration events on the 1st of December. We've got some trips. It's really about just trialing all of the things, putting your diagnosis into place, and start putting an action plan, start putting a revision strategy in place to see if it works. January, February time, we will have had our academic tracking, so we'll know how well we're doing and what we've got to do to improve. We will have a mock series, which means that you will get the full experience in the exam hall. Use that, find the right pen, make sure that you are comfortable, make sure that you're refining and retesting in your revision. We've got some vocational exams happening for year 13. Year 11s, you've got your parents' evening in January, so you can talk about your entries, you can talk about what your specific gaps are for each subject with each teacher. March, we are having a mock revision, mock results day, so you will know how you've gotten on as if it were the real thing. This might be a time when you start opening up your revision to include other people collaboratively, start teaching people so you can really build confidence. And then from May onwards, we are smashing the exams. So 19 sweet short days for the IB students and about 4-5 weeks, about 5-6 weeks for the GCSE. These are provisional at the moment. IB ones are pretty set, but the GCSE ones are provisional, and I'm hoping I'm going to see the celebration in July and August with how amazing these grades are. In class, we will be doing exactly what I said, really. We'll be going to be identifying gaps from our assessments. So a QLA is a question level analysis. We are going to be going through every question that students answer and finding where those gaps are, and using that to give therapy, so to inform our teaching and retesting. And we're going to be working on our technique to improve exam skill and confidence in lessons also. For year 11s, we're going to be doing something called the Pixel Wave. So next week, students are going to be going into the exam hall to get a feel for it, get that practice under your belts. The anxiety reduces massively when you know all of the processes into place. So we take it one step at a time. This is where I line up. This is how I go in. This is how I sit, etc. It's a soft mock, and it allows us to see where students are in comparison to other schools in a national context. So while the IB grade boundaries are fixed, for GCSEs they change, and we know that they're going to be close to the 2019 grade boundaries, so it's going to see roughly where you would sit in amongst all your peers in the country. We then have a list of gaps for each student, and we can repeat this in the spring as well, and then hopefully we have a good comparison. Year 11 were given revision guides. Last year they were given English, Maths, Science, history and geography. If you don't have those anymore, I've got details at the end from each of the subject leaders of how to replace them. Year 13s, there's also that information for you at the end too. Year 11s now, Year 13s will be slightly different timetable for interventions and boosters. They will be in discussion with your teachers. For year 11s, we normally put on revision and boosters and interventions out the kindness of our teachers' hearts. They lovingly offer up their time. Some of them already do to like catch up on things like drama logs, because they do take quite a lot of time, and theory and practical work, obviously. So they are put on, and there will be more put on after we have the results of the first set of assessments. I can recommend the Year 11 Paper Society, Past Papers and Biscuits. That's going to get that past paper practice in, and every single student is invited to that. Year 11 did have science intervention last year in Year 10 in science, but it may be that they now need to move towards that skills practice and exam papers. There are a plethora of online strategies and online ways to revise. Students will find the thing that the groove for them in terms of this. For IB, we've got Cognity, YouTube, IB Academy, Quizlet, really good things on TikTok and Reddit, really good ways to revise. For GCSE, we've got GCSE Pod I'll talk about in a minute. We've got BBC Bite Size, Seneca Learning, and we've got some tutoring on offer. I will talk about that in the next slides coming up. Apps for your phone are quite good for those small bite-sized bits of recall, so just those little bits of knowledge. There's a list of them there, there's plenty, and again, you will probably find one that works well for you, but if you're standing there waiting for a bus, I suggest these are a good idea. Rather brilliantly, the National Tutoring Programme is being offered to all Year 11 students this year in a variety of subjects: English, Maths, Science, Geography, History, French and Spanish. Tutors are fully qualified by a tuition partner that follow our specs, and excellent record of success. Students are entitled to and can receive 15 free online sessions, which is amazing if you consider the cost of tutoring. These are to be undertaken at home, so maybe supervised by a parent. They will be they will be in groups of 3 of students with similar ability, and there'll be like a specific focus for each group. If you are interested, after I've sent out the email, there will be an expression of interest form, and we will pass on that information. You have to rank what is most important to you in terms of subjects. You can do as many as you want, but 15 sessions could clash with the other 15 sessions, so please be aware you need to really focus on what it is you need to improve upon. This is not just for lower grade students or higher grade students, it's for all realms of ability, and you'll be put into your ability groups. GCSE Pod is another thing that we offer free to all students at our school. So even if you've got students that aren't in Year 11, this is for GCSE. They've been really helpful, particular groups of study groups that we have used this year, and they have GCSE pods, which are downloadable or watchable videos for every part of the specification. There are multiple choice revision questions, there are exam questions, and if you're not into the videos, you can just do the questions and then it links you to the video if your understanding is poor. They're quite good to work with families as well. So they do these webinars for parents too. The link is there, so if you want to book yourself into a webinar, feedback on that would be amazing if anyone chooses to do that. They are at those times on those days, so they're a little bit closer to the exam. This is the login details for those. I do run a competition in school, so whoever collects the most diamonds by answering the most questions and streams the most pods gets points for their house. We are a Pixel school, which means that we have lots and lots of resources, brilliant resources that they use. These resources are particularly good for students that are working hard to reach their top grades and they want to do some more independent work. They're just changing over all of their apps now. So if you need resources and ways to get on, I'm happy to provide those. Performance Learning is a partner we have worked with for a few years now, and some people have worked with Tej, the CEO, on these before and looked at these chunking and mapping techniques. All students will now have filled in an assessment with Performance Learning that helps them on a platform build healthy habits. So it might be sleeping, revision, it could be psychological goal setting, things like that. So there are 7 pillars of excellent performance on there, and they help build healthy habits with lessons online. Students log into Performance Learning on their usual login that they would use with school. And again, that's in an email that I have sent students, but I will also pop it on the revision email to you all. So that's the on the computer stuff. This is the off the computer stuff, which when we come down to the bare bones of it, all of the exams that students will sit will come down to a pen, paper, calculator, etc. So offline strategies are really important to get a grip on. They encourage more metacognition, so that means self-awareness of one's thinking, of how well you're doing, how well techniques are working for you, how good your recall is. Good revision strategies need to be active and not passive, and quite a lot of the time students don't know where to start. So a lot of these things are good starting points to help people revise and start learning together. If done in conjunction with family time, with work and things like that, they can be really good at building confidence. So I've just popped some examples there. Also, I'm going to do a link to some other examples explained, so you might want to sort of mix up how you're doing those. So one good example is quizzes. They've got those revision guides or flashcards. Take them, do some quick recall quizzes for the knowledge. Transposing information from the textbooks into onto revision cards is a good idea. Chunking and mapping that we've done, taking that information, reducing it. Graphic organisers, or I've seen these on TikTok called brain dumps, where students put all of their thoughts on the paper and then they add in information that they don't know, and then they add in exam questions to answer on those as well. I've also added the example on the side here of Cornell note making. This is something students can be doing in lessons. This is brilliant for IB, it's brilliant for GCSE, where students rule off one of their margins, put all the core information in the middle and put cues down the side, so that when they're revising they can quite literally fold it over and they've got their cues on the side. And then they would, at the end of the day, when they've got their 5 lessons done, they will pop a summary in the bottom. That's something they can do in their notebooks just in general, and it means that they're going back to their notes and finding the summaries or anything they found difficult. Teaching other people, so teaching you as parents, can be a brilliant thing to do, because obviously once you can teach someone, you are an expert in that field. So and as soon as you stop talking, you know that you haven't really quite learned it that well, or if you get asked a difficult question. Just a minute is a fun game that I am appalling at. So this is a game where you are you've got to speak about a certain topic for a minute without pausing, breaking, etc. I already mentioned past paper questions. I really can't recommend these enough. And podcasts. These are podcasts and YouTube are newer ways to revise, where you watch a instructional video or you listen, so you can go about doing your exercise or whatever, and you can listen to that information. This is a blatant plug for my podcast, which is Hey Science Fans, which is me teaching the full GCSE science specification to my husband with mixed results. So it's a bit of a giggle, and that is focused towards parents wanting to learn what their students are learning, but also for students to learn along with a voice they recognise. I did it mostly because I have a lot of students that I didn't teach last year and I want to catch them up, essentially. So these are in short bite-sized chunks. Give me a 5-star review on Spotify. This is the portion of the PowerPoint where I try not to sound patronising and like I'm teaching you to suck eggs, but things that we can do from home for students. And I've got this written: be the role model you needed when you were younger. So sometimes it really does, you have to remember what it was like when you were 15, 16 and you had these exams to do, but also recognise that since then the world has changed quite significantly in terms of, I don't know, social media, technology, different pressures, that kind of thing, and what you needed then. And it might be totally different from what your child needs. There's a fine line between encouragement and nagging when it comes to teenagers, I find, but here's some ideas that can help: being a good role model, helping your students set goals, celebrating very small wins, small achievable goals, keeping or giving them opportunities to stay or remain active, providing healthy food. Bananas are great, fish is great, protein is great, ensuring they eat on the morning of the exam, ensuring they have time out. Some of our students work so hard, we need to help them stop instead of start. Ensuring and encouraging good sleep patterns, encouraging that unplugging, turning phones off an hour before bedtime, because it really does your brain no favour to see these bright lights before you need to go to sleep. Staying cool and calm and just letting them know that you've got their back. So be the role model you needed when you were younger. I am fast becoming the professional cheerleader for year 11 and for year 13. I also offer a loyalty card like Costa's, where students can complete 9 pieces of additional work for a spin on my tombola. So every Friday I spin my tombola, and if they complete like an extra bit of work, or they go to a revision class, or they do something, they can get it signed off. 9 of them, they get a dip in the tombola, and often it's things like a pen, sometimes it's a cake. I made a whole student a cake. Sometimes it's lunch, sometimes it's just a small treat or a McDonald's, or just little things to keep them going and know that we care and encourage them on their way. This is my year 11 aim for this year. I'd like 100% of our students to be getting their grade 4s or above, but I realise that in English and maths and 5 other subjects, but I realise success comes in all forms. But this is our aim as a school for this year. And in their mocks, you might see them come home with a badge if they've achieved that. If they're in the 75, the 50 or the 20 club, they might come home. And please, again, celebrate those small wins before we get to the big event. And in March, they will have their mock exams, and they'll have a chance to talk to us senior leaders about the revision they've done and improvements that they've made and planning on making. For Year 13, we want every single student to be passing, hopefully with really high levels. So we want, the majority of our students to be getting merits or distinctions. The final slides are information on how you get revision guides and things like that. So I'm not going to whip through them, but I will put them onto the PowerPoint that will be sent to you, so you can flip through them and click on the links that are available there. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great evening. Good luck, and I will see you soon.